How's it going, everyone? You're listening to Double Take. Today we have a little bit of a special / unusual episode where we filmed it in two separate goes. So basically, the first half is going to be our reactions to Game 7 of OKC Houston, and then our reactions to Game 2 of the Heat beating the Milwaukee Bucks. Then the second half is going to be our reaction to the Denver Game 7 win over the Jazz, as well as the Raptors losing to Boston in Game 2. So please enjoy this episode. Have a good one. What's up, people? Welcome to another episode of Double Take with the Safety Bros. We're back in Boston. It's good to be back here, back at school. You know, we just got started with our semester, so it's been a few days since we've been able to do an episode. But of course, that doesn't mean that there's not been great playoff NBA basketball. We've had 2 Game 7s, the beginning of the Eastern Conference semifinals. Very favorable outcome for ya boys. We're very pumped. So, of course, we're going to get into all of that. We're going to get into both Game 7s today. We're going to talk about the Eastern Conference semifinals. And we might do a little bit of a preview for what we're going to expect from the next round in the West. But first, what's going on, Johnny?
Well, before we get into this episode, I just need to say, you know, the emotions were high a few hours ago watching that Heat game. Just like Game 1 against the Bucks, this Game 2 was just as stressful. I would say even more stressful. A lot of bad calls. Was not
terrible.
Was not loving with the rest, but we're not gonna get into that. I just wanted to take this as a moment of appreciation as a Heat fan, as an NBA fan, as a basketball fan. You know, not many fan bases get to enjoy the fruits of their organization like this.
We got the Godfather. We got Spoelstra.
I'm very appreciative.
Spo we trust.
Jimmy did great Game 1. Dragic has been incredible. We 7 guys in double figures. I could go on about it, but I'm just so appreciative now. We're not gonna, the series is not over. It's far from over against the Bucks, but we're not taking this moment for granted. We're enjoying the taste of this 6-0 playoff start. Go Miami Heat.
Let's go Heat. All right, that's a quick little intro. Yeah, we're gonna get into all the Heat stuff later. But John, what are we gonna start with today?
But first, we just watched Game 7. Between the Thunder and the Rockets. What a wild game. Lou Dort scoring 30 points. Chris Paul having a triple-double. The Thunder ended up losing by 2 in the end. But just a bizarre game all around, Alex. Harden not playing well. Westbrook not playing. He playing better, but still not having an incredible Game 7 performance. We've seen so many guys, in Game 7s and teams kind of not play as well. The nerves are very high, and we saw that in this game. Alex, was this one of the most bizarre games you've seen so far in the playoffs?
Definitely. Probably easily, this year for sure, even in a weird year. One of the just crazy, I guess it might be just bizarre, flat out bizarre. The most bizarre game we've watched with Lou Dort throughout that's this whole series through games 1 through 6. He's shooting 18% from the 3-point arc, and a guy that, of course, they show after the game on SportsCenter, they had the little green circle to show how open he was, and he was open for a reason. Is something that we like to say about guys like that. But he answered the call in Game 7, coming out super clutch, 6 for 12 3-pointers, John, 30 points, and he's the only player 21 or younger to score 25 plus points in a Game 7 other than LeBron James and Kobe Bryant.
He is in company with LeBron and Kobe, and I have to admit, coming into the bubble, I did not even know who this guy was.
Yeah, I don't think.
And you know what? This Double Take Sports. Undrafted. We're some of the best sports analysts in the game.
Yeah, that's right.
And we didn't even know who he was. So I'm just saying. No, I watch a lot of basketball, and I just really OKC. I just don't even remember seeing this dude in the regular season.
So
and all of a sudden, he's a playoff hero for them.
So of course, I'm glad that I started with Lou Dort shout out because he's got to have the highest player approval rating in the NBA as far as the NBA fans. Who doesn't like Lou Dort? Maybe Houston Rockets don't like him, but so that was one weird aspect of the game. Another one, James Harden, not a guy known for big playoff moments. A guy who usually we like to say disappears or shrinks or chokes in these moments. he has a pretty bad game. I will have to give credit to Lou Dort again because he's been playing great defense on Harden all series long. And Harden goes 4 for 15 from the field, 1 for 9 3-pointers. Pretty ugly game for Harden. Harden did have put his imprint on the game, though, however, with a lot of good passing. And he did make the arguably what they were calling the play of the game, a play that I really hated to see, which was at the end of the game, CP3 dribbles, and it looked like the Rockets were in a the Rockets were down, or the Rockets were up 1, the OKC has the ball, and I thought the Rockets were playing a 3-2 zone. And so as Chris Paul kind of drove, and maybe just Westbrook came early. Anyway, the ball ends up getting to Lou Dort, and that's when Harden was able to block him and pump his shots.
Unsatisfying.
Which
end.
It was an unsatisfying ending because you did want to see.
We wanted to see CP3 get the ball.
You want to see CP3.
You want to see the great players get the ball at the end of the game and take that last shot.
And you wanted to see the underdog win. And of course, Harden is a fun guy to root against. I did want to see just Twitter explode with, look, you traded Chris Paul for Westbrook and look what happened. And he beat you in the playoffs. And Harden chokes again. And Harden, he will never have a ring and all these things about that.
And it's not even about the underdog, which you're right, Alex. Like, people will always love to root for an underdog, and just in sports in general. Sometimes we have friends who I know, like, they don't even have teams, but they're just like, I just like rooting for the underdog,
Yeah, of course.
But in this game, it wasn't about that. Like, I don't know anyone who likes the Rockets. For some reason, it's like, I think it's the style of basketball they play. It's the fact that Harden has not been great in the playoffs. Like, just all the podcasts and on ESPN and, all
they're not a very likable team.
People are up in arms about Harden. They're so upset by how bad he is. And everyone's saying, I can't wait to see what's going to happen in Game 7. I can't wait to see. And he was horrible. And after the game, he says, I played like shit. He straight up says it. And he apologized for cursing live on national television. But he says it and he admits it. And he is lucky that, thank God, his team still was able to pull it out. Yeah. One of his teammates, Robert Covington, had 6 3-pointers, had a great game, had 21 points. Westbrook also carried some of the slack.
Westbrook had a good game in the clutch time. And also Jeff Green, who it just seems like, all right, dude, it just continues to shock me that he has these games where he goes off. I mean, he had 3 threes, 5 for 7 overall, and it's like they picked him up off waivers, So,
right.
Of course, but yeah, Covington probably the MVP of the game, making that free throw at the end there, even though he missed one of them as well. But we mentioned Chris Paul a little earlier, John, and I know we were both kind of rooting for him. Underdog factor.
As a basketball fan.
Yeah, and I know some people don't like him. I really wanted to see him win. He goes for a triple-double, but unfortunately, I really do think he had a chance to win the game. Not even with the play where the ball ends up to Dort and Harden gets that block. It was another play before where, say, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander hits a 3. Now they're up 1 point. PJ Tucker comes down, hits a little floater, and now the Rockets are up 1 point. I think there's about 20 seconds left at this point. And Chris Paul, there's like a little 7 or 8 footer mid-range shot. And it looked automatic, and he missed it, and I was like, ooh.
It was when all these guys kept flopping, kept trying to draw the charge. A bunch of dudes were just falling down. I think the refs didn't even know what was going on.
Yeah. And then, speaking to the refs, John, there's been, both with the Heat game, which we'll talk about in a minute, and this game, just a lot of just weird and pretty bad reffing tonight. With kind of Scott Foster was one of the refs for the OKC game tonight. And it's funny because I remember back when Chris Paul and Harden were both on the Rockets, they had both spoken out and said, this guy, he hates us. He can't. I don't know why they keep reffing. They filed a formal complaint to the league about Scott Foster. And then this came out just after the game, literally 20 minutes ago, was Mark Spears tweeted that Chris Paul said, and after the game, that Scott Foster made a point to tell Chris before the Game 7 tonight, that he also reffed Chris Paul's Game 7 loss to the Spurs in 2008 when Chris Paul was with the Hornets.
See, but I don't understand.
Scott Foster's just a scumbag. He's just a scumbag.
But forget that, because clearly, we humans have emotions, and referees are humans too. They're not just robots that call travel violations, So for whatever reason, these two guys have history.
They never call travel.
Chris Paul and Scott Foster have history, and they got bad blood. Why is the NBA... I would love to know how the inner workings of the league work and how that referee gets assigned to this game with Chris Paul playing
and
when
Harden.
He knows that he beefs with this player. Yeah. Why would they want that? Why would you ever want... This is the thing that was so upsetting about this game, and we're going to get into the Heat game in a second, about we hate when the referees help decide a basketball game. We want to see two teams playing essentially in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Where the calls are made when there's illegal contact that has outcomes on the game that don't relate to like basketball skills. So like if you push somebody, obviously we need refs there to call that because that is not, basketball talent. But you hate to see when the refs are overplaying their role in this game. Absolutely. And it was just so evident in both these games. The refs were just doing too much here. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good segue getting into this Heat game.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Miami Heat ended up pulling this one out. Thank God. But at the end of the game, we made some mistakes, a few with the inbound passes, and Jimmy Butler threw it away. Mm-hmm. Brook Lopez got that 2-pointer to cut the lead down, and the Heat are up 3. It's 114-111, and Chris Middleton comes down, chucks up a 3, and Goran Dragic has got his feet to the ground and his hands
straight up. I mean, it's pretty textbook.
Guess who called a
defense.
3? Guess who called a foul on the 3-pointer? The referees did on Goran Dragic, which was just one of the worst calls we've seen in a long, long time, in my opinion. And it wasn't just that last call. It was the entire game we were seeing calls like this, with Giannis overturning what would have been his fourth foul early in the third quarter, which would have taken
so many bad calls.
The Heat just should have been up so many more.
And there was
points
just so many calls too, where the Bucks would like fall on the ground or like lose balance, or no one would touch them. And they're just calm. And it's like, okay, we get it. He's the MVP. He's a superstar. Like, you don't want them to go down 2-0 because that doesn't fit your agenda or whatever. You want the best players to
the league got an agenda, and we're not.
No, and I don't really want to pull that card.
I'm Giannis in the final.
I'm like half joking when I say that, but at the same time, it just really, really looked like it. Like, it's like, what is going on? Like, we should have been up by 20 points in that game.
No, yeah.
And I think our biggest lead was maybe 12, which is fine. Like we played a good game, and I'm glad that by the end of it, like you said, they made that terrible call against Dragic, and we came down, and what didn't seem like a foul to me against, on Butler's shot. They made him. It was a makeup call.
No,
and Middleton shouldn't have been able to tie the game. So at least they gave Jimmy the opportunity to win it with those free throws when the clock was already at 0. So I'm fine with that. But
and as much as I'll say like how the refs the league doesn't want us in their agenda. We are up 2-0, so I am half joking. And they did make that call to compensate for the horrible foul call on Goran Dragic on Chris Middleton's 3-point attempt. So I loved it. Jimmy Butler goes to the line, 0 seconds left to win the game, and he knocks them both down. 116, 114. Heat go up 2-0.
Beautiful win, John. Beautiful 2 games that we won against the Bucks, and now we're in the whole season we're 4-1 against them. So looking great. So in game 1, let me just kind of go big picture. Game 1, Jimmy drops the 40-piece. He has very clutch buckets in crunch time to close out the game. What I loved, what we saw in that game was in the very end, like almost like 3, 4, 5 times, we saw Dragic. It was basically an ISO. Everyone's at the bottom except Jimmy at the top with Middleton guarding him. And they send Dragic to him to set the screen so that Jimmy can get the switch, and George Hill guarding him. And of course, it's easy money for Jimmy. So Jimmy has an incredible offensive game. But then tonight he comes, and pretty pedestrian game on the offensive end. Overall, I would say he did what Jimmy does best. He's able to impact the game in so many ways than even when he's not rolling offensively. Right. And I think Goran and Bam probably get the MVP tonight. Goran came out guns blazing, and Bam made a ton of huge plays. His rebounding has been great over the past 2 games, and his passing as well. But so I just wanted to say, give that a little context. But on the Bucks side of things, John, can they make any adjustments, or are they done? Like, you're down 2-0.
Honestly,
I know that if you had home court, maybe they wouldn't be down 2-0. You'd be going to Miami. Maybe the games are split. Who knows what happens? But now they're down 2-0. There's nothing really that looks going forward like they can make an improvement. So what do you see? I mean, to win this series, they'd have to win 4 out of the next 5.
So I think, they have to win 4 of the next 5. Or they can win 4 straight and win 4-2 against us. But that's the thing. One thing I would say, so just to answer the question quickly, the Bucks are not done. And the reason why is we're not up 2-0 going back to American Airlines Arena for 2 straight games. We're not going back to Miami. So they still have 6 more games in the series, or no, I'm sorry, 5 more games in this series on neutral court. So the fans are not going to play a role, and these games are all just as likely to win any of these games. It's not like game 3 is harder than game 2 was to win. So they almost pulled out game 2. The other thing I would say is that as far as the adjustments go, I'm surprised that I'm saying this, but I think I want to see more from Giannis, and I need to see him be more demanding. I hate to say it to his coach, who he said, no, I'm gonna do whatever coach says, and we see him sitting at points in the game where I don't really think he should be sitting. It's 5 minutes into the game.
A very similar rotation to what they had all season long. I think Giannis played
you're
around
down 2-0
30 minutes
in the playoffs. You're down 2-0 now. You got to be playing.
Yeah, he should play like 40, 42 minutes.
Play the whole second half. Yeah. If you're losing, you're losing.
He only played, I think, the past 2 games. He played 37 and 36.
And we need to see him be more composed. And we've seen this from LeBron, and I guess that's what we're comparing him to now. Is LeBron would be composed in these moments, and he will take over these games.
He's not. I mean, you can't.
He's not on his level. But that's what I'm saying. He is a back-to-back MVP, Defensive Player of the Year. This man, I think, he needs to be more composed. There was times where we just saw him coughing up a ball or falling over or whatever. I think he just needs to, fine, maybe not compare him to LeBron. Let's compare him to Shaq. He needs to just be more dominant and just body up a little more. And I know the Heat, we're playing perfect on them right now. And the team, we're so balanced. What we're doing with 3-pointers, just to touch on that quickly, Crowder had 4 threes tonight. Goran had 4 threes. Hero, Dragic, and Kelly had 3 threes. So that's 5 guys that had 3 or more.
No, big time.
To start.
And in game 1, John, 2 things. I wanted to mention how it's funny you compared him to Shaq. Game 1, that was probably one of the reasons they lost was their free throw shooting was abysmal. But he went 4 for 12 from the free throw line, which is good on us that we were able to send him to the line so many times. But as far as 3-point shooting, game 1, the Heat didn't have a great 3-point shooting game. Let me see what we shot. I think we made 12. Actually, you know what? We were decent. We shot 38%. That was by the end of it. It ended up much. I think the first half we weren't shooting great. We were still in the game, so I was very happy with it.
We're down 3.
But this game, we came out and I was like, all right, this is the game. And you know what? Our best 3-point shooter, Duncan Robinson, still hasn't had his game where it's like, all right, that's the Duncan game.
Hey,
and he's due for it. Exactly. We got shooters, and that's the thing. Jimmy said this at the end of the last game. He said, I scored 40 points. And that was what we need to do. What I needed to do for us to win. But we have so many guys who can do that better than I did it last night. So I'm not even worried about it. Look at.
And he was 100% right. 100% right. He was we had 7 guys in double figures. He was, I think, the lowest. He had he finished with 12, 13, right? Mm-hmm. I think it was 13. So he finished with 13 points, and it's 100% right. Dragic led the way this game, and Dragic also joining Shaq, LeBron, and Dwayne Wade for guys to have. I think it was 4 20-plus point games in the playoffs consistently.
Yeah.
So love to see another guy like that. But getting back to how balanced this team is, like that Jimmy quote talks about, it's just so great to see that any guys can take over. Jimmy has 40 in game 1, and it's almost like, oh, shoot, he's not going to do that next game. Can we beat the Bucks again? Guess what? He had 13, and we still came back and did it
and then you look at guys like Tyler Hero, 3 for 11 in game 1.
And that's offensively.
Game 2, 6 for 13. Tyler Hero, let's just give him a shout out. Let's take a few seconds.
This man is 20 years old.
He's like a week older
and he's
than us.
Playing like he's Udonis with all the playoff experience that
I think
Udonis
it goes to,
has.
obviously, hashtag Heat culture, but also the trust that Spo has in him, and that Spo plays him in crunch time, and he's taking it up the court, he's setting the offense, he's doing things that you don't typically let a 20-year-old do in the NBA playoffs in a big series. So love to see it. I love, just love watching this team. It's good to be up 2-0, but I know that game 3 they're gonna come in. They're gonna play they're gonna play like they're down 0-2.
Oh yeah, they are, and they're gonna play like they're like their backs are against the wall because they know if they go down 3-0, that's pretty much the funeral for their season. And we saw this in game 1 early. They got off to an 11-point lead against the Heat. The Bucks were playing. They were taking all the shots that we wanted them to take. Giannis was shooting far out shots. He was getting the ball out of his hands when he hit it to the paint. But you know what? All the role players were hitting their shots. Middleton, Wes Matthews, Brook Lopez, these guys were making their shots. And additionally, Giannis was shooting the far shots we want, the jump shots we want him to shoot, but he was making them. So the thing is, we're going to force them to do what they do not as great as Giannis in the paint, right? That's what they want to get to. That's what makes them so great, is how dominant Giannis is. And we saw little flashes of it here and there when we would miss a defensive slide or Giannis would beat someone, or if he got a full head of steam from the 3-point line, he would take his 2 steps, dunk it, and that's that. But we do such a good job neutralizing that I don't know what they're going to do in games 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I'm not saying the Heat are going to sweep, but I'm just saying I don't know what they do next. I don't know how. I mean, the game is they're very Giannis centric, and I don't know how they can switch it up.
Going down 0-2, that is a tough thing. It's like, all right, you just lost 2 straight games. What can you do? Here's what I'll say. This is going to sound a little simple, and this isn't rocket science here. It's like game 1, Giannis did not have a great game. Milton did. Milton was 12 for 24, 28 points, 4 threes. In game 2, no, Middleton didn't have a good game. 0 for 3 from the arc, 6 for 15, only 23 points. So what's going to have to happen? The only time they've beaten us this year was Giannis and Middleton combined for 66 points, which I know we were also missing Goran and Jimmy. So it is what it is. But like just those, at the end of the day, for them to win,
both of those
doesn't come down to Lopez, doesn't really come down to Bledsoe as much or Wes Matthews, whatever. If those guys play great, then fine. But it's going to come down to Giannis and Chris Middleton. And it's pretty simple.
Okay, we're back. You just listened to our reactions to the 2 games that were played tonight on Wednesday night. Game 7 of the Rockets Thunder and Game 2 of the Bucks Heat. Wow. The win that team had was very impressive. But now we're going to get into some of the rest of the storylines this week.
Can't believe that player really made those big plays down the stretch. It was pretty impressive to see, John.
Great, 2 great games. But Utah-Denver, Alex, that was the Game 7 that was last night. What I predicted to be one of the best series coming into this playoffs. It was nothing short of that. It easily was, I would say, the most entertaining series that we saw after, the 57-point game by Mitchell. Then we saw Jamal Murray come back with a few 50-point games of his own. The Jazz answered after losing Game 1, winning 3 straight, and then they lost 3 straight. So the question I got, Alex, did they blow it? Did Donovan Mitchell blow it? He had 30 points in Game 5, 44 points in Game 6, and then 22 in Game 7. The Jazz had 78 points total. The Jazz just blew a 3-1 lead, and they joined the Warriors and the Oklahoma City Thunder and the rest of the teams that have done that in NBA history. Do you think they blew it?
So, John, that's a tough question to answer. I mean, when you're up 3-1 and you don't win the series, the clear answer is yes, they blew it. And I think the main issue,
I would agree,
though, and the reason it's not a very simple answer is because I don't really think I can hold it against Donovan Mitchell because Donovan Mitchell, as you mentioned, he kept them afloat in many games. He had 57 in one game, he had 51 in another game. And if you look at his averages, I'll just read them off. There's nothing, numbers don't really lie. 36 points, 5 assists, 5 rebounds. He shot 54% for 2-pointers and 51% for 3-pointers.
That's ridiculous.
He had an incredible series.
He made half of his threes.
This is the series of his career so far. He's still young. We know that, but I think the Jazz overall. Maybe this just should be. I should put more blame on maybe Quinn Snyder or just the construction of the team or the fact that they were missing Bojan Bogdanovic. And I think the team became too dependent on Mitchell. And this is something I said after Game 1. I remember that was our first playoff episode that we had done that we did.
Right.
And I said Mitchell goes for 57 in this game and they lose. This is going to be over in 5 games. Denver's going to win. Mm-hmm. And I ate my words because in the next 3 games, really, we saw incredible play from Mike Conley was hit. He had that one game where he looked like Steph Curry, where Jordan Clarkson went off for like 26 points off the bench. Royce O'Neal and George Niang had hit important shots too.
Yeah, they were playing solid role players.
When those guys played well, they won 3 straight games. And then another thing, just kind of a little off topic, has a team ever won Game 1 of a series, Game 5, Game 6, and Game 7 of a series? Basically, winning the first game, losing 3 straight, and then winning the last 3. That's what Denver did.
I don't know how we would search that up on Basketball Reference, but I'm sure a team must have an NBA.
Dude, are you kidding me? That's insane.
I would say there's probably a few teams that have.
That's nuts to do that. But so yeah, I would say that's what the issue that the Jazz ran into is they were too Donovan Mitchell centric, and then of course when you go 7 games, sometimes your legs are a little tired. Everything. It's hard. It's harder to get offense. That offense that you depend on, and so when Mitchell wasn't having one of his games where he was playing lights out, and of course, who's the next best player? Rudy Gobert, a very defensive guy, a guy who's very much his values on one side of the floor and not the other.
Yeah.
So even though he did have that very dope Euro step in the end of the game, was kind of
well, he started putting them on the back. He looked like the closer, like it was gonna win the game for him because They were down, like, what was it, 20 or 19 in the beginning of the game. They're down 14 at halftime. The Jazz ended up coming back.
Yeah, that was when Mitchell. That's the thing. The one quarter that Mitchell, did play the way he played the rest of the series. I think he had like 16 in that quarter or 15 in that quarter. Yeah. They pull it within 5.
And just that last sequence, he has the ball. They're down 2, 15 seconds, and I'm like, let me see. And I had picked Denver in 7, and I want my bracket to be as accurate as it can. Which right now, my bracket's only off by like a few games, which is pretty great.
Shut up.
My bracket's killing yours probably. But right, so but still, even though forget my bracket, I was like, I kind of do want to see like D Mitch, one of my favorite players in this league, go up and make that either the game tying shot to force overtime in Game 7, or I want to see him at the game winning 3-pointer. And he did what you could expect a 23-year-old player to do. He turned it over. He hit the floor. Then on the other side of the court,
Denver gives it right back.
Jamal Murray sets up Torrey Craig perfectly to hit the layup, misses a layup.
But I don't know why you're doing that either. Just hold the ball. The clock. There was no more time on the clock.
No. But Alex, you saw that layup.
Yeah. No.
ESPN,
Torrey Craig should have made it. But
I don't trust ESPN's win percentage type of stuff. But they said Torrey Craig open, like going up to make that layup, he had a 79% chance to make it. So you're taking an 80% chance.
It's a layup. It's gonna be 100.
No, but if they foul you, you go to the free throw line. You can miss a free throw, and then you're down. You're only up
Murray
3.
in the end. I'll trust Murray knocking down a few shots. But
right. And the guy was in front of him. He made the right play to a teammate who should have hit a wide open layup, who missed it. And honestly, that's what the crazy thing about sports is. Mike Conley dribbles down, gets a shot off with 1.5 seconds left. The buzzer goes off. The shot rims out. And the thing
that was such a good
we are talking completely differently about this series, about that game, about Donovan Mitchell's performance, about Jamal Murray's performance, about Jokic's. We're talking completely different if that one shot was an inch,
it is funny.
It goes an inch more into
or about Torrey Craig, or about how Jamal Murray passed up that ball.
Exactly, but instead, Mike Conley missed it. Donovan Mitchell hit the floor. It was very emotional. We saw him crying after the game, which is just something that I love to see in a guy. You love to see that he's that competitive and wants to win. And now this team knows, man, still on his rookie contract, they're about to sign to a big extension.
Yeah, I think they just announced it today.
But just getting back to your point, I totally agree with you. The team is very Donovan centric,
especially on offense.
And the fact that they didn't have their 5th guy, I guess I would say, because they had between Conley, Mitchell, Gobert as their core 3, and then Ingles and Bogdanovich as 2 good offensive guys. Not having one of those dudes definitely hurt them. Everyone thought they were shorthanded going into the series and thought that Denver would win, in 5 because of that. But you're totally right. That's the thing about a 7-game series. It exposes the team's flaw because even though they're up 3-1, you have to beat that team 4 times. So to get that last win, after all that the Nuggets had learned in the first 4 games about how Utah runs their team, they were just ready. And Denver was ready to go into that those next 3 games. And they had the blueprint. They figured it out. They knew how to defend a little better.
Well, they're the better team. They're definitely the better team.
And not only that, we have to talk about Jamal Murray, who dropped 50, 42, and 50, I think. He lost one of the 50 points. And then last night, didn't have a great game. But you know who did? Jokic. So he put them in the position to win with his Game 5 and Game 6 performance. And then his teammate, I guess, I don't know if he's the Robin or the Batman. I guess in this series, maybe Jokic was
I think
the
Jokic
Robin.
is still Batman.
He is. But you know what? And that's what Jokic said after the game when they interviewed him. He had 30 points in Game 7. And he said, Jamal Murray did it for me in Game 5 and 6. So he wasn't playing too well tonight. So I had to carry it for him. And you know what? You can't say the same for Donovan Mitchell.
Exactly.
He didn't have a teammate to do that.
And he doesn't have anyone even close to Jokic on his side. And it's something that I said, it was one of my takeaways from Game 1, which was we saw Mitchell, he clearly was the best player on the court in Game 1, but by the end of it, between Jokic and Murray, those guys were too much. And I remember saying that Jokic and Murray are too good for just Mitchell. So, we're talking about those great players, John. And
when you have 2 great guys against 1 great guy.
Yeah, 1 great guy. Or, you can include Rudy Gobert, both teams who have younger players and younger guys who have been on all-star teams. Who do you think has the brighter future? Just answer just real quick before we get into a preview of the Denver-LA series.
So I think it's tough because if we're just talking about by one guy that I like the most, I would probably, if I could take one guy from either of those teams to start my team around, it's Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah.
Probably I don't think Utah has optimized it. They put a very good team around him. They haven't optimized and made the best possible team they could put around him.
I wouldn't say that.
They're probably gonna. I will say this. I want to see if they could trade one of these guys and make a different team? Because
Gobert,
how far do you go with Rudy Gobert as your second best guy? You know, how far? Like, we know what he is. He's going to be this great defensive guy. But when you're paying so much for him, and Bill Simmons was talking about this with Joe House on the Bill Simmons podcast. Look at what the Celtics did. They're spending all their money on, and they haven't yet spent money, I don't think, on Tatum and Brown for extensions. Or maybe they
Brown. They paid Brown.
Brown they did, but not Tatum yet. So right now they're paying Kemba, Gordon Hayward, Brown, and Tatum. They're investing on those 4 wing guard guys, okay? Mm-hmm. And you know who they're spending like barely any money on the rotating 5th guy, I guess, with that lineup.
The centers.
Either Tice, Robert Williams, or Enes Kanter.
Yeah.
So that was a great point that he's making there. A team like them, who's now up 2-0 against the defending champs and probably going to go to the Eastern Conference Finals, they're investing all in on wings and guards.
Same thing with the NBA is dominated by perimeter players.
Exactly. And I said the only big man you could potentially win with, and he's not even your number one dude, is Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
Who, because he has more versatile offensive game. I want to say that Gobert's probably too one-dimensional in his game. So I want to go with Denver. I think they're super deep. I think Michael Porter Jr. Is still very young, and he could, if he becomes a more meaningful like third guy, then once you have your third guy and they're all young, Jokic is 25 or I think almost 26, and Murray's 22 I think at this point.
He's 23 I think.
Murray age. Okay, he's 23 years old. So he's also 23. So him and Mitchell are the same age. So they're both showing they're going to be great players in the league. Gary Harris also didn't play a lot this series. He's another young dude, 25 years old. Michael Porter Jr., 22 years old. So they got a very nice young core. But I'm not going to rule out the Jazz to make a trade. They only got one more year of Rudy Gobert, one more year of Mike Conley on the books. And then who knows? Maybe they could put a nice other scorer with Donovan Mitchell. So, but now getting into the next series, Alex. Jamal Murray was being interviewed by SVP Scott Van Pelt after the game. And he says, so what do you guys do to get ready for Thursday against the Clippers? And he just reacts. He goes, Thursday? We don't get 2 days off? And he goes,
it was so genuine,
that's
too.
A bummer. And you just see the look on his face. He puts his head down. You're like,
it wasn't like him joking around like, oh my gosh, we play in 2 days. It was like genuine,
but I was shocked too. I was like, oh, so I'm wondering, because the Clippers have been waiting, the Lakers have been waiting, and because the other 2 teams that they're potentially gonna go up against are in Game 7. What's going to happen? Are they going to give them a few extra days of rest?
No.
And no, they're giving them they're giving them what they would usually have. You're playing every other day because of the fact that it's the bubble.
Yeah, they're trying to go as soon as possible because they're trying to plan for next season.
But you're getting into the next series, usually you'll have at least a couple days off of not playing the game. But instead they get today off and tomorrow night, Game 1 against the Los Angeles Clippers. So Alex, what do you think about that series? Who do you see coming out on top? Do you think the Nuggets have a chance to take out Kawhi and the Clippers?
So here's what I'll say. We just watched the Clippers struggle with a very young 7 seed, the Mavericks, Dallas Mavericks. Of course, we know they have Luka. We know it was his playoff coming out party, played out of his mind. At the same time, the Mavericks were missing their second best player, Kristaps Porzingis, for almost 3.5. You can include the game where he got ejected, which was BS. So basically 3.5 games. They're missing their next best player. And then you look at the other dudes. It's the Dallas Mavericks supporting cast isn't anything crazy. It's Trey Burke. They picked him up. There's Steph Curry. They signed him at the end of free agency. Maxi Kleber. Like, these guys aren't the best guys ever. Tim Hardaway Jr. So the Clippers struggle with that team. And I look to Denver, and while I don't think Denver has anyone as good as Luka, I do think that this team is deeper and has a better supporting cast around their best player, whether you think it's Jokic or Murray. So at the same time, I don't think Paul George is going to play as terrible as he played in the first round. So if Paul George can, honestly, they're not even asking too much of him. If Kawhi's going to do what Kawhi's doing.
If he had a decent game.
Kawhi right now is giving you 33, 10, and 5 and great defense. If Paul George can just almost just be a better version of just a 3-and-D guy, then they're gonna this would be light work. Because even if Murray is going off and scoring, maybe I don't suspect he's gonna score 50 in any of these games. But let's say he has a game or two where he scores 40.
If he's scoring 35,
I don't think it matters. I think Jokic is probably the X factor for Denver because
they're gonna put Zubac on.
Yeah, they don't really have a great guy to guard him.
So I understand what you're saying, and I probably somewhat agree. I think I could see it going two different ways. Either the Clippers are going to come out and be that team where we know they're capable of being, with Pat Beverly, Lou Will, in the backcourt, with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard putting the clamps on and also doing a lot on the offensive side of the ball. Like those four dudes, that's where it starts with, and then the other role players fill in from there. But if we see them come in, be complacent, play how they did against Dallas, right? I mean, the no rest for Denver's brutal, but the one thing that I do think is good is they're going to be kept on their toes, and they want to stay playing this high level of basketball that they've been playing. Mm-hmm. Clippers have had a few games off. The Clippers, get complacent, and they feel like they pretend like they're the Warriors, of 17, 18, 19, when they would begrudgingly give their A game in the regular season. They wouldn't care. It's the playoffs now, and they still haven't given us their full on their A game. I could say that they did in the past two games of the series against Luka and the Mavs, games 5 and 6, but I think that there's two different ways. They could come out and get punched in the face by a team that's just more into it right now and not rested, but the other team will. It's like the rest versus rust thing, and I'm not saying the Clippers are gonna be rusty. It's almost like they'll get complacent by just waiting. And
I don't think they will.
The Nuggets
are
ready.
They're gonna come out and I think they're gonna just. And it's interesting looking at the Western Conference versus the Eastern Conference. In the Western Conference second round, I think those series are. They're going to be much easier than the first round was for those teams. And the second round for the East is going to be much tougher. We saw all blowouts in the first round for the East, and the second round looks like these will be fun, or maybe not if the Raptors roll over again. And then the other side, I don't think that the Clippers, I don't think the Nuggets stand much of a chance. I think the Clippers should make light work of them in 5 or 6 games, and I think the same for whoever comes out or whoever just came out tonight. That team against the Lakers. Yeah. So
I'm gonna stick with my pick before the postseason. I'm gonna go with Clippers in 6 over the Nuggets. All right, so my bracket looks pretty good right now after that series. I predicted completely right, Nuggets in 7 games over the Jazz. And also I have the Celtics in the finals. I have them beating the Raptors in this second round series. And right now they're up 2-0. Toronto needs to win 4 of the next 5 against Boston, which is certainly possible.
Yikes.
But so far, the matchup does not look too great. The Raptors are 11-3 in the bubble, Alex. All 3 losses are to the Celtics. That's crazy. They have not lost to any other team other than the Celtics since March. And the Celtics have been the only team that's been able to beat them. So, one more thing I want to say that I called before the series getting into it, because I picked the Celtics. Alex and I, we actually made a little $50 brother bet. And I put on the series, I said Celtics would win. You had the Raptors. And I said I trusted Kemba, Smart, Brown, Tatum would be playing lots of minutes if it comes down to the wire. And look what happened last night. Game 2, Kemba had played 38 minutes. Smart played 38 and a half. Brown played 36 because he kind of got injured towards one point in the game. They pulled him. And Tatum played 42 minutes. And that's what's happened. That's what happens in the playoffs. Game 1, they didn't need to play that many because it was a blowout. So, Alex, what do you think? Is Toronto going to make this series interesting, or are the Celtics just going to run right past them?
Okay, John. So I did pick the Raptors before the series. And look at game 1, total blowout. Toronto did not come to play. They shot 29% in the first half, and then it ended up 37% overall. Excuse me. You're not going to win a game shooting that poorly in the playoffs. It's pretty clear. You also factor that in with the Celtics actually played well in that game. Tatum was 9 for 18. Kemba was 4 for 7 3-pointers. Smart had 5 of 9 3-pointers.
That was the game. That's what he does.
Go to get. No. I'm talking about that's game 1, John. Game 1, he had 5 of 9.
Yeah.
Then you go
so 2 games in a row.
Then you go game 2. Boston actually isn't playing great, and the Raptors are doing a good job early. And then Kemba's struggling a lot. Brown hasn't really looked great in either game, to be honest. And then Tatum's really the only guy keeping them in it. He ends with 32 points. But of course, the difference maker, Marcus Smart plays the greatest quarter of his career. He hits 5 straight threes, which kind of came, of course, they came out of nowhere because you never really expect something like that.
Well, there was one that was the and one. And every time I'm watching, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe. I'm like, don't shoot it. Give it up. And he makes it every time.
That was definitely the difference maker. So I made a lot of, a lot of my decision on picking the Raptors in the series was based on their depth and the fact that I didn't think guys like Marcus Smart were going to be able to have big games where they hit,
offensively,
5 or 6 threes.
It should be 1-1.
And I think it should be 1-1. I think,
but I don't know about. But game 1, the Celtics just
looking to the Raptors side of things. you look at their 3 best players, especially on offense. You look at Siakam, you look at Fred VanVleet, and you look at Kyle Lowry. Those guys did not come to play. Those guys, those are the guys at the end of the game, and I wouldn't say they came to play in either game. First game, they totally gave up, and then in game 2, at the end of the game, they ended up losing by 3 points. That's a game it's very winnable. And there was 5 minutes left in the game, John. And you were saying you thought the Raptors were still going to come back, and I said it's over. The Raptors are not going to win. I can tell you, no one's making shots right now. The guy who was making shots was OG Anunoby. He had the best game. He was
they still
4 for 6 3-pointers, hit 2 in the fourth quarter.
Still only lost by 3 points. But I thought Raptors were going to win games.
You go down the line. Siakam is supposed to be their best player. 6 for 16. That's not good. 1 for 4 3-pointers. You look at Lowry, 5 for 16. VanVleet, 8 for 22. No one was making shots. And in the end of the game, even if you're struggling all game long, that's the time. That's what we saw this with LeBron in game 1 of the bubble. Was Clippers versus Lakers. This was just regular season, whatever. And LeBron struggled all game long. But guess what? At the very end, when it mattered, he did hit the game-winning shot. And the Raptors don't have anyone like that. And I was upset even 5 minutes before the game was over. And I was like, yeah, there's no way they're going to be able to do it. So I don't think there's and then I guess one thing I wanted to say too is the Celtics franchise, the entire franchise since when they were created in the 60s, has only lost 1 playoff series after going up 2-0.
And it was against LeBron.
It was against the 2018 Cavaliers, led by LeBron James. They go up 2-0. They would lose the next 2 games in Cleveland, mind you. And then you go back to they won 1 more game in game 5, and then Cleveland wins, I think, 2 more. So unfortunately for the Raptors, they did not have home court, and I really do think that makes a huge difference in what we saw happen.
Traveling up to Canada.
Boston doesn't
Drake
go
on the sidelines would have been chirping Marcus Smart. The fans would have been chirping him. There's no way he would have had as great of a shooting game.
Boston doesn't go 2-0 in Toronto. That just doesn't happen. So yeah, it's pretty much over. I will say I don't think that the Raptors can make this competitive. I'm going up to whether they even let's say a miracle happens, they push it to game 7. I'm still gonna pick Boston. Yeah. It's clear that they're the better team.
I picked Boston in 7. I agree with you. One thing I will say, I wouldn't be surprised though if the Raptors, even though they've turned back to the Raptors of old, the team that stinks to bed in the playoffs, I won't be surprised if we see them go 2-2, come out of these next 2 games and win 2 straight, because look at what we saw in the Houston-Oklahoma City series. Houston won 2 straight games, and Oklahoma City looked like they were not going to be able to win more than 1 game in that series, and they won 2 straight. So sometimes you can see a team pull out some close ones, and I think the Raptors are capable of doing so if we see the Celtics get a little bit complacent.
Yeah, and I guess I shouldn't give up too, just because of that OKC series where it looked like after those 2 first games that the Rockets were going to easily win. And then here we are, we're looking into game 7. It looks like OKC has the momentum. Yeah. But guess what? OKC is a guy like Chris Paul. This is kind of the reason I wouldn't think that the Raptors can even make it competitive. They're not going to win 4 of the next 5 games.
But they don't have
the guy.
They have the Chris Paul of the East, Kyle Lowry.
No, he's not.
But they have NBA champion Kyle Lowry.
Here's what you do. You listen to people praising Kyle Lowry for things that he actually does well, and then say, well, he's not a great, offensive player.
Really? Because this series, what happened? What happened this series?
No one says he's the best offensive player ever.
People picked this team to go to the finals.
Yes, but it's not. It wasn't because of Lowry, John. It's not because of Lowry.
I'm just saying a big consensus pick was Raptors over Celtics. A lot of people were doing that, and I was the only one.
I think it was pretty split. I disagree. That's just a lie.
All right, maybe
now you're just trying to act like you're the only one.
I need to go watch more Sports Center.
Yeah, you should.
But can you imagine picking them to win the finals? Imagine that was your finals pick.
I thought it was crazy because
subtweet our guy Eli Maluhi. He picked the Raptors to win the title.
But he only did that because he was just pushing back on you.
Pushing back on me, right? To Lowry. Saying they would lose in the second round because Lowry's not an all-time great player.
Anyway, I think that either way, whoever wins the series, give me the winner of Bucks Heat to get to the finals.
I like that too. I like that. I would love to see it. Even though I'm sticking with the Celtics, I still pick them. I'm not trying to jinx my team, but go Heat.
And now, before we finish this episode up, let's give our safe bets of the week.
All right, Alex, safe bets of the week. Just to recap, I'm up on you big time. I got 3 wins and 1 loss. Right now, my 3 wins are all Celtics games.
I think that automatically means you have 0.
Yeah, sorry. Listen, I'm gonna keep riding with the luck. I got the luck of the Irish right now. 3-1. Alex, you're 1-3 right now. What's your safe bet gonna be? How are you gonna come back on your big brother?
You know what? So Denver just played a pretty grueling 7-game series. They have one night off. Jamal Murray's a little upset about it. They're going up against a rested Clippers team. Kawhi's looking nice. I expect Paul George is going to have a little bit of pressure off of him now that he's going to get his head right a little bit. And they're only favored by 8.5 points. Yeah, I'm taking the Clippers in a blowout. And for them to not do that, I think, we're going to have to see Pandemic P come back, and we're going to have to see Jamal Murray probably go for 40, which I don't think is going to happen. So I'm picking the Clippers minus 8.5. And you know what? If I jinx it, we'll have a good series.
This is fun because I don't want to go with the Celtics here. I think, for all you bettors that are listening, I think parlaying the Raptors and the Bucks money line together is a smart idea. I do not see either the Celtics or the Heat going up 3-0 on the number 1 and number 2 seeds, respectively.
Anything can happen in the bubble, though.
I can't bet on the Celtics, even though I've been riding them to 3 of my 4 bets, my safe bets. I'm gonna go with the other game tomorrow night. I gotta go with Denver plus 8.5, Alex, which you just went with the Clippers. I actually disagree with you. I think Clippers are going to come out the way they do. They're going to lose game 1 of the series, and they're going to end up winning either 4 straight or they're going to win 4.
Get
They're
outta
going to win 4 of the next 5 games, but they're going to. I don't think they're. And even if they don't lose, they're going to. I think Denver can lose by 8 or less because they're playing their best basketball right now. They just had a grueling 7-game series.
They scored how many
points?
And
the Clippers
scored 30 points in the second half. That's the best basketball.
What was Jamal Murray doing before that? He had his bad stingers going out.
It doesn't matter.
And what did we see? Who do we see playing horrible against a worse team? Paul George and the rest of the Clippers.
Came back and had 2 great games.
Kawhi Leonard's gonna be there, but I think the trend we've seen from this Clippers team is that they've been a little bit complacent, lazy. They've been acting like they're the 2019 Golden State Warriors, who had 5 All-Stars and had already been to 4 straight finals. This team, I do not think they come out swinging, and 8.5 points is a lot to give up. If it was 5, that's one thing. I can't bet on the Celtics again. I'm going Denver plus 8.5.
You have a lot of faith in Denver, but I'm feeling good about this. I'll catch up with you. Well, everyone, it's been a good one. We've had a lot of great playoff basketball. Looking forward to another, month and a half-ish of it. Maybe another month will be in the finals by then. So, go Heat. Thank you for listening. Have a good one.